Alright, both teams basically kept their defensive coverages the same, and the main adjustment was just the matchups, because the Mercury decided to assign Thomas onto Jackie or even Chelsea when both of them were on the court together, so that meant Mac was assigned to Asia early. I can understand their reasoning for this, because Thomas is mobile enough to keep up with the Aces guards, and she just doesn't have enough length to contest Asia's jumper, so Mac just makes more sense. But that didn't have an effect on Asia getting her shot off, so they decided to adjust again with Bonner instead of Mac, and I think that's probably their best matchup against Asia, because she's got the mobility combined with the length. Even though they did have to send some doubles for her at times, at least she did get some solo stops, because Asia plays with finesse rather than power, so that does make it somewhat easier for her, and I think Asia's adjustment just has to be her flipping the mentality to the opposite mindset. She's got to take Bonner off the dribble or just duck her under the rim every single time, because her size is the advantage in this matchup, and when she did do that, Bonner basically had no chance at defending her. But as tough as Asia was for her, it was even harder for their entire team to defend the trays, because the Aces were always pushing the rock off any stop, so they couldn't set their defense often, and the Aces just rained them in transition. All it took was one clean look off a fortunate deflection for Lloyd to go on a ridiculous heater early, and that just opened up the floodgates for the others to follow suit the entire first half, so the Aces took control of the game early. But I thought the Mercury was just as good at punishing them for not setting their defense in transition, and the main difference was just the Mercury trading 2s for 3s, because a lot of theirs were leakouts or them getting downhill, so they couldn't ever really cut the lead. A lot of those were stemming from Satu, because she was always running the floor or pushing the rock, and more importantly, she was getting back to her bully ball, so she was just as effective in the half court. If anything, that was a mentality from the entire team, because they finally went back to exploiting their size advantage inside, and they even started incorporating more splits, so they weren't just pounding the rock inside, they were also finding cutters on a simple pass over top. Even though the Aces were good at denying any entries and always having the low man pull over early to deny the catch, their post-ups were still their best possessions, because with the Aces reading everything, that's really their only way to put the Aces in a scramble, so they've got to continue playing inside out. But that's all without mentioning them also using their size to secure roll boards, because players were crashing out the corners or getting deep positioning under the rim, and the Aces were even matching that energy on the other end, so theirs were doing some of the same, except they were mainly using their quickness to get to any 50-50s or long bounces. When those weren't just keeping the possession alive or leading to second chance points, they were at least leading to loose ball fouls, and the whistles were another factor of the game that was consistent on both sides, because the refs were definitely quick to blow it on any type of contact inside, whether it was a slight hit, hold, or bump. It really didn't matter if it was soft or even if the defender was as vertical as possible, so whenever any player got downhill or caught a pass inside, the ref didn't hesitate to call a foul. And on one end, a lot of them obviously benefited Asia, then on the other, a lot of them were spread amongst the Mercury stars. I don't think I've ever seen that many and-ones in a game, and those were really how the Mercury were able to eventually run it back in the fourth, because Bonner got one early in the quarter, then Copper got back-to-back ones during her big run later, so the momentum was shifting on their side throughout. As the whistles compounded, the game slowed down, and in turn, the Aces lost their pace, so their offense got stagnant, because by constantly taking the rock out the net, it allowed the Mercury to constantly set their defense. I thought it was inevitable for the Aces to lose, especially after Jackie and Asia had a disconnect in the last 40 seconds, because the two were having to basically create something out of nothing the entire quarter, but fortunately for them, the Mercury could never capitalize with a go-ahead then or even throughout, and that left one final possession for Asia to right her wrong. Even though she went on to hit the game winner, the MVP was really Becky for calling a timeout when Jackie initially had nothing going, because that allowed him to reset with an SOB for Asia to catch the rock in her spot off a middle pin, and if it's not Becky, then it's gotta be Thomas for her late double. For some reason, she decided to commit it on the dribble instead of the catch when everyone knew Asia was taking the last shot, so even though she was there on Asia's left shoulder, it was just a little too late, because Asia already got to raise up for a look, and that led to Asia icing the game right in her face. Just watch the tape.
You bet! Asia will goes in with .1 to go.